Hello, welcome to Free Range American, guys. We have a special one set up today, one-on-one with Representative Dan Crenshaw. Welcome back. You've been with us before. Election is coming up, and we just wanted to chat before we went in and want to hear everything that you're doing and everything that you're trying to do for Houston the second go around.
Well, there is an election coming up. Always good to be with you, JT. It's been exciting working with you on a number of projects. So, yeah, there is an election coming up. It's a contentious one. It's consequential too. Everybody says that every election. You've heard it from if you follow politics. Every time somebody gets on the stump, they're like, "This is the election that matters. Everything changes with this one." But I think there's a rational argument to be made that this one is pretty consequential, just because on paper the policy differences are so extreme. Mm-hmm. They've never been that extreme before, and that's not because Republicans have gotten more extreme. I'm biased, of course, I'm a Republican, but I think that's objectively true. We do not have policies that are any different than we did 10, 20, 30 years ago. So the Democrats have wildly different policies than they did even 5 years ago. This is not the party of Barack Obama. This is the...
They seem to change themselves quite a bit. It's almost like they are arguing with themselves too.
They are, and there's that battle with on the left. And this is the nature of progressivism. This is what I explain to people. Like, the nature of progressivism is constant progress. Now, you can argue whether it's really progress or not, but it is constant change. And that's kind of their point, right? They're always trying to change, and they in order to outdo their last self, or their last election, you've got to keep building on it. They've got to keep promising yet another thing. And if they're going to compete against each other in primaries, they have to outpromise each other. So this is how well-intentioned, compassionate liberalism, which I think there's good space for in politics, that's how that turns into authoritarian socialism. Because in order to promise more and more and more and more, you need more control. You need more more money. You need more money, right? You need to tax people more. This builds upon itself. This is how you've actually gotten to a presidential election where one of the main campaign promises of a presidential candidate is to raise your taxes. That's an incredible thing, right? And I'm flabbergasted by it. Maybe voters don't believe that they're going to do it. I don't know. Maybe they truly believe no, they're only raising it on the rich. This isn't true though. Tax policy assessments and experts have looked at this and said, you do this policy, everybody's real wages go down. I mean, across the board, because it's not just personal income taxes that gets raised. It's
I don't think people
see
that though. I don't think they understand that because, and here's a point I want to bring up is you would think we're in the year 2020. We have fiber internet all over the country. We are the most connected population that has ever existed. You start thinking back to the early 19th century. How did you campaign then? I mean, you were on a horse, rolling around with leaflets and things that you had to crank a printing press to do, and you had to talk to small groups of people and hope that you're definitely not a presidential campaign isn't getting all the way to California.
All right.
Back then and getting back in time. So it's how do you, now when we're the most connected, yet we're the most disconnected because no one actually listens to policy.
No. We noticed that. And it's also, even if they do, it's not clear that people are even voting based on policy platforms. Trump wins on the issues 49% to 46% against Biden. 56% of people polled say they're better off than they were 4 years ago. So it's really not about the issues for most voters. They just don't like Trump. Okay. Yeah. And then there's a quick connection between that and everybody down ballot. And so we do see some split tickets, but
here's just one, and maybe you can shed educated light on this. I see a lot of my left-leaning friends, being from the Pacific Northwest, they blame the president for everything that happened with the virus. Mm-hmm. Yet the president let the states decide what they wanted to do with it. So how does this work? How is it, hey, you let the states decide how to handle this, but no, it's your fault?
There's no good explanation for that. You hear that across the board. So, they operate in a very collectivist fashion. So one talking point spreads like wildfire and it becomes truth. Right? It's all his fault. Well, how is it his fault? Because he didn't control it. How would he control it? Well, he would.
He tried. He tried to stop flights coming in from China,
right,
and then he was called a xenophobe.
Right, exactly. So when you question people on this, and they're like, "Well, what would you do differently then?"
Yeah,
you know, they don't have an answer.
No, not at all.
Well, we would have gotten more testing. How would you get more testing? Like, do you think Trump just had this? There was like two options, right?
Magic
that they
testing
gave him.
facility.
Here's the testing button. If you press this button, you get more tests, and everybody gets one. If you don't press the button, then you don't get more tests. And Trump is just like, I don't want to press the button. I mean, is that really what you think happened?
There's no reality to it, and that's what I question. I'm like, your governor was in charge of your area. Isn't that what you wanted?
Yeah.
You voted for your governor.
Do you want more lockdowns?
Yeah.
Do you want, do you want us to take your property if you refuse to wear a mask? Meaning, do you want us to fine you? Do you want us to put you in jail? Now, how much of your freedom do you want me to infringe upon as your government? Right. That's the real question. And it's been very perplexing to me to see how many Americans like really, really want more of their freedom.
This is the first time we've ever quarantined healthy people.
Yeah, I mean, we're quarantining healthy people, and I understand that rush to fear at first when we didn't really know what we're dealing with, and when then there was an honest need to flatten the curve just enough so that our hospitals weren't overwhelmed. That's rational policy goal. It quickly devolved into irrational thinking, and now we know in hindsight, because there's plenty of studies that would demonstrate this. You can do simple comparative analysis to demonstrate this, but lockdowns are not effective. Right, they're not effective the way we thought they were. They impose enormous costs at very little benefit. The spread happens as the spread happens, whether you have a universal extended lockdown or not. And you don't want proof. California, Texas are pretty good comparisons. Our spikes happened at the same time post Memorial Day after the large scale riots, and you can say some holiday gatherings and things like that. And our trends look basically the same. And yet California unemployment rate's almost double what it is in Texas because they imposed those extensive lockdowns.
And well, that's where I thought the mistake was to begin with, was rather than put out a blanket precaution saying if you abide by X, Y, and Z, you're allowed to stay open.
Right.
Rather than saying, no, they can stay open and abide by X, Y, and Z, but you just have to be closed forever. Right. That doesn't make sense. And do you think a lot of governors are going to be being sued into the Supreme Court for this as being unconstitutional?
Yeah. I mean, they should be. I do think it's unconstitutional. I mean, we can quibble over that all day long. But in any case, they shouldn't win re-election. The American people need to understand that this was ill thought out policy.
Like the New Jersey governor continues to find, like I know a friend of ours named Ian that has a gym that has maintained all the strict guidelines for any business that's open. They've had 0 cases come out of the gym, yet they're facing over $400,000 in fines from the governor.
Wow.
Like, do they want to just drive business out of their state? This doesn't make sense.
It's incredible. It's spiteful. It's hateful. And the most concerning thing to me is that I do not see the American people even realizing it. That's actually the most concerning thing to me. I think the people watching this show are, probably do realize it.
Yeah.
But if you just look at the polling and you look at where people are at and who they blame for the consequences of this virus and and how they still feel about lockdowns and these things, they're not holding these Democrat governors accountable.
We don't control the messaging. Messaging's controlled by the other side.
Right. But even then, it's like, you got to see what's right in front of you at a certain point.
You would hope.
Yeah, you would think so. And so we just got to keep beating the drum. I mean, the data is in at this point. This is bad policy making. It gets to this broader notion on policy. If you want to understand how the left and the right think, this is a good way to frame it. The left is about compassion, right? We can never out-compassion them on rhetoric, at least. And they tend to sell it this way. They tend to sell their radical policies because they say, well, we are for the boldest, most radical policy because we care the most. Right? We care the most. And if you don't agree with us, then you just don't care. You don't care enough. You're not as caring as we are. That's pretty clearly the case with lockdowns. It's how they sold lockdowns to people. We're trying to save your life because we care about you. It's all about caring. That's why we don't want you to have any freedom. That's why we want to shelter in place. That's why we don't want your business to ever open up again. The Republicans, all they care about is the stock market, right? So no, we care about trade-offs. We care about balance. So being a Republican is really about understanding the nature of trade-offs when it comes to policy making, that there are no really true costless solutions. There's just trade-offs. And a responsible adult goes into government and says, we're going to have a responsible conversation about the trade-offs. That's how we should have had this conversation about coronavirus and the lockdowns. That's just not what we did.
What can we do? Like, it's crazy. I still can't believe, like, I believe firmly, like, I don't think we're ever going to see an end. Like, there's not going to be a day where it goes on the news, hey, no more masks. I think it's going to be forgotten about, and then it's going to trickle for like a year where people are going to be like, wait, do we still do this? But I haven't heard anything. Like, because if they come out and say, we're not wearing masks anymore, then they're admitting, hey, we just made this up.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been really against masks because it's costless, right? It doesn't cost us anything to wear the mask. But I don't pretend that it's the end-all be-all either. Some countries don't mandate it at all. European countries don't.
It's over in Australia. It's over mostly in Europe. Like, travel is lifted mostly in Europe.
Right.
I've had some friends that have been traveling all over Europe.
The need to shame it to the extent that the left does is hyper unnecessary. And to the right, and on the right, like the anti-mask movement's a little bit over the top as well. I kind of fall just in the middle on there. I mean, wear a mask, it makes you feel better. It prevents you from sneezing directly on somebody. Okay, I can see some benefit in that. But what I've really fought hard against is the lockdowns. You do not have the right to infringe on people's freedoms to that extent. People do have a right to engage in risk the way they see fit. It's government's job to provide those guidelines, to provide that knowledge and education and data and statistics, and let the people make decisions for themselves.
Governor Abbott has lifted them, correct? Like he said, everything can open now with guidelines.
Yeah, with guidelines. Bars was this recent reopening. Bars have been hit really hard. A lot of them closed. A lot of them closed. A lot figured out how to sell food so they could basically act like a restaurant, which I think is perfectly fine. But he still left it up to county judges. And our county judge here is, she's in her 20s.
I heard about this.
Yeah, she's never been in government before, got elected here because of straight ticket voting. And engages hyperbolically in this sort of rhetoric, which
because
again,
I think it's camera time. I think some of these people want the camera time. So it's like, oh, how can I push myself?
They want to persuade you that they care the most. They want to persuade you that they care the most. And that's what they want. They want your vote. They want your support because they want to convince you they care the most. And the only way to convince you of that in their minds is to try to impose the most radical draconian policies. This isn't smart, though. This isn't balanced. And we shouldn't be rewarding it. That's what concerns me the most is that they're being rewarded for it. It's not good. And so they still have not lifted the sanctions on bars here in the Houston area.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because it is up to the governor left it up to the counties to do it.
Wow. And here we go with that. Yeah. With no end in sight, though.
Right.
Is this going on?
And there's no standards. They don't lay out proper standards. According to the standards they laid out for opening up schools, if schools actually adhere to them, and a lot of districts just didn't, they would not open until maybe next year. And this is just not rational. This is not reasonable. This is not a balanced approach. They are not taking it. They refuse to acknowledge that there are trade-offs, that there are costs to these draconian policies. And that should infuriate people. People should vote based on people in government that can be trusted to make rational decisions. And these are people not making rational decisions.
We don't want people to die.
Our county judge.
But when you make somebody close their business and now they can't pay the rent for their business, they have to let all their employees go. They now can't pay their mortgage at their house. They now don't have money to go and buy food for the family members that they have living in their home. I'm sorry, did you not think about this?
No, they don't. They pretend like it's secondary, and they pretend like it doesn't happen.
No, but we don't want you to die from the virus. You know what? At this point, I'll take the virus.
It's just they pretend like there's nothing. They pretend like there's no trade-offs. So they are not the most caring and compassionate as they say they are. They're blind. They're blind to the trade-offs that exist, and it's very frustrating.
So how has this campaign trail been going for you around here in the Houston area, in your district? What are you fighting for out here?
Well, listen, we've got to restore our economy. We've got to restore our way of life. That's primarily what people want. People would have answered that question differently in January of 2020, but post-recession, post-COVID, people care about their healthcare and the economy. When the economy is doing well, the economy goes way down on people's lists as far as issues they care about. But these days, it's the economy. We got to have our jobs back. We want to protect our energy sector. The reality is a vote for Democrats in this particular election is a vote to destroy our energy sector jobs. In the Houston area alone, you have about 125,000 jobs supported by the industry. When you're talking about no new permitting for oil and gas and fracking, that's a problem. It's already, you're kicking an industry while it's down. And where is it you think you're going to get your oil and gas and electricity from? If
you're not doing these things.
This is the question that Democrats don't seem to have an answer for. Again, it's all about cost benefits, right? So you destroy the American energy sector as they want to do, and they gleefully talk about this. The only differences in policy on their side is the timeline, right? It's that timeline of transition away from any kind of fossil fuels. But here's the reality. The demand for energy does not go down around the world just because they wish it did. Yeah. Okay, it still
only
exists.
Going up.
It's only going up by about
Population is rising.
25% at least increase in the next 20 years. So who's going to provide that energy? Then if it's not us, it's going to be other countries like Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia. And guess what? They provide that energy in a much dirtier way than we do. Natural gas from Russia expends about 47% more carbon emissions on a life cycle basis than U.S. natural gas. That kind of matters, right? So if you care about the environment, this is a bad idea. If you care about our economy, it's a really bad idea. So two bad ideas don't make a good idea. Last time I checked, these make double the bad ideas. And so, support the U.S. energy sector is supporting the environment, because if we export more natural gas, then the same carbon emission reductions that we've had in the United States, we could replicate throughout the world. Natural gas is a really solid way to do that. Invest in nuclear too. The left is obsessed with only one solution, and it's wind and solar, and that's fine. Like, let wind and solar compete on the market, but you can't pretend like these are perfect solutions to clean energy. They're really not.
They're very, very space. You need a lot of space.
You need a lot of space. You've got to mow down a whole lot of acres to impose and put these things. You have the industry and manufacturing capability to build solar panels.
Plus the wind blades are non-recyclable.
Yeah, well,
so
neither solar
we're stacking
panels.
Those things up right
now. And the rare earth mineral mining that has to occur, and then the lengthy transmission lines that it takes to actually get this energy out, and how inefficient it is the longer a transmission line is. You're never going to get to the battery storage that there's this claim of, if we just add like the best technology with batteries, that where are you going to get all this lithium? And where are you going to put these in, even at the theoretical limit of how much you can store energy in a battery?
And how much impact does it have to mine this lithium?
It's enormous. It's enormous. I did the whole podcast with Michael Schellenberger, and once you start to lay out the facts on this, it's a very prohibitive technology. It's not giving you a lot of great energy. It's not as good for the environment as they claim. So, is it part of the mix? Sure, let it be part of the mix, but it's going to have a pretty serious limit, right? You cannot power industry off of solar and wind. It doesn't provide the megawatts necessary, and just for energy density reasons, for pure physical reasons, it is not an efficient source of energy. So, if we really care about reliable energy plus clean energy, then you should be investing in nuclear. But the left wants to eliminate that too. I mean, in the Green New Deal, it talks about eliminating nuclear.
Why? Nuclear is extremely clean.
Because it's not about clean energy for them.
Nobody understands it. Like, that's the thing. You have one incident in Russia. Well, in Russia.
For them, it's never been about the actual environment. I mean, I truly believe that it's about control, and it's about their favored solutions. It becomes an obsession with their favored solutions, and they, and will rationalize that however they need to. And the Democrats are very good at doing what sounds good, right? What sounds good
On paper.
if you think
It
about
seems
it
like
for
they're
a
only
second.
looking at like one day ahead.
Yeah,
it's like
it's about- yeah.
all you guys that I've met over the last couple years, it's like everybody is always like, hey, 10 years, 15 years, this is what we're looking at. But the left side is just like, no, tomorrow.
Yeah,
No, tomorrow.
Short-term thinking, the most extreme policies possible because it feels good, it feels the most bold, and it's like, I can run on this right now. You know, I can give you free healthcare and free education. Is there any consequences to that? No.
We don't know.
Yeah, like,
I doubt it.
you know, it's very irresponsible. And you know, I'm always imploring Americans, vote for responsible governance. This is what you should want out of governance. It stays out of your way to the greatest extent possible and is responsible in its decision making.
The
very
healthcare
simple.
thing almost gives me a headache because I like to say, like, anybody that's ever remodeled their house or tried to build something on their own property, when you go to the county or the government to apply for the permit, they get to decide if you are allowed to do that or not. Well, you now want to give the government power for, hey, if you have this illness, the government decides, is that cost effective for us to treat it, or is this an acceptable loss?
And what's worse about, so that's one
Like,
part
who
of
would
it.
vote for that?
A lot of people apparently. And you know, and that's so that you're talking about the triage effect, right?
Yes.
And like, so in Great Britain, they call this panel NICE. Like, it's an acronym. It stands NICE. I don't know what it stands for, but it's almost like this Orwellian language of like, it's the NICE panel, but we decide what healthcare you're going to get.
Yeah.
And you've seen these stories come out in sort of nationalized healthcare systems. The main problem, though, is that Medicare for All is basically price controls, right? So, because in order for it to even come close to the estimates that they say it's going to be at, which is still double or tripling your taxes, by the way, for it to even come close to those cost estimates, you've got to reimburse doctors at a rate of about 60 to 70% of their costs. So what does that do? What does that do when you say, like, if you want to sell a Black Rifle coffee espresso can thing, you know, because you want to compete with Red Bull, because you didn't bring any for me, so I had some Red Bull.
Evan, I'm sorry.
No. Sports.
I'm sorry. Should have brought some for me. But if you want to sell that at $5 a pop, and that's how you're going to grow your business, that's what you decide the market will bear, and the government's like, well, you can sell for $1. What are you going to do? You're going to probably cut costs somehow. So you're going to hire less people. You're going to have less manufacturing. You're just going to have less. That's what happens when you put in price controls. You get less supply, or you just put the place out of business. Maybe you
Same
can't
thing
even,
with hiking. This economics works the same way with saying everybody needs $15 for minimum wage. Okay, how
Exactly.
many businesses go, we'll replace them with a machine?
Right. Yeah. Your budget hasn't changed. Right. That's the key insight there. Budget hasn't changed. And so price controls work the same way. So you're going to get longer lines because you're going to have less doctors. You're going to have less capacity in hospitals. They're going to cut costs. A lot of these independent clinics will just shut down. I know because I've asked.
There's going to be a fixated salary on doctors at that point. So
Yeah,
who's going
yeah,
to want to be
right.
Who's going to want to spend that money on med school when they can do the calculations in the beginning, going, oh, this is going to take 12 years to pay back?
Yeah, they're not going to do it.
Oh.
You're going to get less. You're going to less of that. Yeah, and for all of those reasons. And so you also get less innovation. So if this is why the comparison to say like firefighters isn't correct. Okay, so a lot of people are like, well, look, we do firefighting. Like, why can't we? Like, we're like, that's a public service.
It doesn't cost you a $500,000 to become a firefighter. Let's start with that.
It doesn't. Yeah, yeah. It's apples and oranges for a lot of reasons. Okay, like but the reason I'm getting at is that the service itself is very simple, right? So a firefighting service is it's simple. There's one thing it does: it puts out a fire. Also, there's no private sector that needs to innovate. Like we're not looking for new ways to firefight. There's basically just a way to fight a fire, and that's not going to change a whole lot. Healthcare is not that way.
Medicine in
you're
general.
Right. Yeah, like first of all, it's not single point of service the way a fire is.
Yeah.
Okay, like there's long-term service, there's different types of services, different specialties, but also we need to innovate. And so when you stop putting any money into the system except the bare minimum, well, then you're just going to get the bare minimum. No company will invest billions of dollars necessary to develop that new drug
Because they know that they'll never make it back.
they'll never make it back. There's no point. There's no incentives
So
whatsoever.
you're not getting better treatments. You're not getting treatments.
Right. All the innovation left Europe as countries socialize their medicine. Innovation leaves. That's always been what's happened. They have access to a lot less drugs than we do. We pay for it. I mean, like our healthcare system is not perfect. We need to reduce costs. But the only forces that reduce costs while maintaining quality are free market forces. And so you have to have a mix of that. I'm not saying I'm not a libertarian. I'm not saying the healthcare is purely free market because you do have an interest in subsidizing those who truly can't afford it, even if we do get costs low. I recognize that. So there's a safety net mechanism that has to occur. But there's much smarter ways to go about it. So that was a long tangent.
These real conversations don't happen. Like we have to sit down and watch these debates, and they go, "This complex health problem we have in the United States. You have 60 seconds. Go."
Yeah. I'm going to give you better healthcare. No, I'm going to give you better healthcare.
I mean, why?
I don't know.
I've seen this point brought up recently. It's like all the questions that all the senators are asking Amy Coney Barrett right now. Why aren't we doing that with our presidential candidates?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like,
it's a good point.
We messed up in our system somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, and we should fix that. Like, hey, let's sit them in the seat
right,
rather than getting soundbite after tiny clip and say, okay, you're in the seat for 5 days. You're going to answer all these questions and you have unlimited time.
Yeah. And I don't know what the right way is to do it because how you can get people to watch it. I don't know. And I just know that people need to be more curious about what their politicians stand for. That's why we do a podcast. So I'll go into lengthy detail on healthcare policy on my podcast.
People need to be more curious where their money is going.
Yeah.
And what their money is doing.
Right.
And then
right.
What does that vote mean for you when it comes down to your property, your health, and your money?
That's the thing. Conservatives always ask me, when is government going to get more accountable? And I'm like, well, the people have to want it to be.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Because right now there's massive amounts of people voting that are voting for higher taxes, and they're not asking the government to be accountable for it.
I mean, we've also been told
because that's what a vote for Democrats means.
There's a number of people that have committed actual crimes and nothing happens because the people go, oh, it's okay.
That's what's happening.
Just a rumor. It's happening right now.
It's happening in Houston constantly. I just met with some police officers 2 days ago. They told me on at least 62 occasions this year, because of the bail reform that's been instituted by this county, by this new leadership and county judge and district attorney, where bail reform meaning you basically don't even have to post bail. Just leave. You're done. We're not even where we hope you come back
we'll see
after
you
that
later.
violent crime.
Yeah.
So on at least 62 occasions, they've reoffended in a violent way. So that's 62 violent offenses
that could have been
prevented. And guess where those primarily happen? They primarily happen against minority populations, right? They're not happening in the nice suburban white neighborhoods or the kind-hearted liberals that live in some of these neighborhoods.
Why isn't the DA and the
happen
judge
to
being
them.
held accountable for this?
People don't. People just
care.
don't. People have to wake up to this.
Yeah.
I mean, people have to know what's going on.
No, I want to
and they
yell
have
at the
to
guy
care.
in a uniform on the corner of the car.
Right,
No,
yeah, they want to blame the police.
It's not his fault.
They want to blame the police, and it's
we haven't seen a single mayor, a single DA, a single judge face any sort of repercussions. I mean, look at the mayor of Portland is responsible for the injury of dozens of federal officers. Mm-hmm. Why isn't this guy being freaking indicted?
It's insane. I mean, not just that, but like the failure of downtown Portland, like the failure of many businesses, the harm done to
I think
people
are
of Portland.
Pissed off. Like they keep blaming these kidnapping foils up in Michigan on, this is Trump's fault. It's like, no, you're pissing everyone off now. You're just going to keep seeing this happening.
Well, they didn't like to point out that one of those guys in that kidnapping plot was a BLM supporter.
No, they won't say that.
He was at a BLM rally. But, either way, like you're driving people to the point of insanity to where, and America's got to hold these people accountable.
Because we're not.
And then I'm worried that they're not. I'm worried that they're not. I mean, people need to know right now. A lot of your listeners are in Texas. Democrats are out in droves voting right now. They make up the majority of people voting early at the moment. And they're not switching their vote. So we know Democrat primary voters when they're voting. That's the data we get back. They're not voting Republican. Just so you know, they're not holding anybody accountable.
They haven't switched yet.
No, they're not going to. So you got to get out and vote. I mean, there's what the Democrats' big plan is to take the Texas takes the state house back. You only need 9 seats to do that. It's very vulnerable. It's hard for these state reps to get out and campaign and to get well known, to raise money. So it is so important that you go vote down ballot. Texas works for a reason. There's a reason that so many companies like yours and people are flocking to Texas, because there are certain responsible policies that actually work. And it's a very simple. The formula is not hard. Right? Give people more freedom, not less. Take an emphasis on border security and safe communities, reducing crime, following the law. Again, reduce taxes, reduce regulation, number one business environment for companies in America. You compare that to California, they do everything the opposite, and they have worse outcomes as a result.
Yeah, but you have all these people fleeing these places and then coming here and voting the same way.
I don't know if that's happening or not.
Yeah.
They just don't know. In Cruz's election, the data indicated that it was native-born Texans who were voting Democrat more against Cruz than.
So you don't think when we do, if they did flip and they took the House and then pulled their same garbage that they pull in places like California, you think then Texas would wake up and go, oh no, we ain't doing this?
Possibly. I mean, Texas voters, I think, are inherently center-right, because if you sit down on policy issues with them, your suburban voters are going to be center-right, but they're angry at the president, and so they're just it's a little bit reactive at the moment, I think. So that's what we're seeing, and that's why we got to get out and vote. I mean, that's why we don't take anything for granted in this election. Just because I know that a majority of people agree with Republicans on things doesn't mean they're voting Republican. Okay, now, it's hard to explain why that is, but it is. Some people just vote on personality of the guy they want in charge. So you got to get out and vote, because what happens if Democrats take back the state house is they'll redistrict a lot of us out of, make it impossible for me to win again.
Really?
That redistricting happens next year. So this is their plan.
Same thing they're trying to pull with DC becoming a state. And
exactly. It's more power, right? The Democrats operate on 2 channels. It's their utopian outcomes that they kind of say they believe in, but really what they care about is the power. Yeah. And so changing the institutions themselves to maintain power, that's their real goal. That's what they're really excited about. And that's why the fact that they can openly advocate for this stuff and get elected, the fact that America is sleepwalking into an authoritarian regime is mind-blowing to me. It's mind-blowing. Like, why do you hate your freedom so much? Why are you clamoring to give more of your hard-earned money to the government so that they can spend it on things that they'll I don't know, whatever whimsical idea they have at that moment, because the way they govern is not based on universal principles. It's not based on our founding principles. It's based on whatever's popular in the progressive left.
They want to get
rid
of amendments.
Yeah, they don't like them. They don't like them. Yeah. They don't like this whole notion that you can't infringe on people's rights. They don't like it. They feel it gets in their way.
Oh yeah.
It gets in the way of their utopia and their need to change human nature fundamentally into their kind of utopian thinking. It's very problematic.
And you said, we were talking earlier about the Biden campaign has completely stayed away from the gun debate. Mm-hmm. Why do you think? You just think it's a death sentence for them?
Yeah, well, I think they've noticed the obvious, which is gun purchases have gone up dramatically. People have seen that.
Not just from our side either.
No, yeah, it's a lot of first-time gun buyers because, there's no need for me to go buy a gun this year, right? I already have my guns. Why would I go? I might maybe purchase some extra ammo, but like a good Texan, you already had ammo.
Yeah.
So these are first-time gun buyers, and there's a reason for that, right? People don't feel safe in their communities. It's become obvious that
security is, for the first time in a lot of people's lives in 2020, security wasn't absolute.
Right. It's incumbent on you. You better take care of yourself because the cops have been vilified. They won't come
They've
anymore.
been defunded. They're overwhelmed. They're understaffed. They're fed up.
Yeah. And that's understandable. So no, it is noticeable how they've not put that front and center at all. Probably a good thing.
Yeah, I definitely had noticed such an uptick in a lot of left-leaning friends starting to ask gun advice as soon as some of the lockdowns started back in April, May, and everything. Like, hey, what do I need? You're asking now?
Yeah.
And then the astonishment when they realized what it took to buy one.
Yeah,
that was a funny one.
There are background checks. Yes, there's always been background checks. There's no loophole like you've been told. This has always been a lie. But yeah, it is astonishing.
So you and I worked on a commercial recently.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of that?
You did okay.
All right,
good.
all right,
Yeah, that was awesome, wasn't it?
I mean, for our
so
timeline, that was we had a very, very tight turnaround.
Yeah.
To get that moving. So
we did it all, and people don't realize. People think it costs like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Didn't at all. I think we fundraised about 20 times what we paid for it. Yeah. And it took us a day. I mean, 24 hours. 24 hours it was done.
One day of shooting, and then the jump was segmented on a separate day, and that was it. And it was down to efficiency and how do we, again, we were fighting time. You were like, we need this out by this. Okay.
It was awesome. People loved it.
But we need to do more. I'm excited.
We can take that theme and run with it. There's so many other candidates. I wish we thought of it like a year ago, so that we could have had a whole series
and
by
then
now.
Planning and stuff like that. I hope we get to do it next year. Get into Florida,
so cool.
California Reloaded, Florida Reloaded, and stuff like that. So
and just tease it out to people.
So how's the reception been getting out there with your district and stuff like that? Meeting people face to face. Are they fed up now? Or is this kind of solidifying them in this race?
The coronavirus is still front and center in people's minds, and people fall on interesting sides of it. It does tend to be the more conservative you are, the more likely you are to not be afraid of it. It's a really interesting psychological discussion as to why this fell on party lines. Whether it's conversation about lockdowns versus no lockdowns, or general risk assessment, or general risk tolerance is much higher with a conservative than it is with a liberal. Why is that? I mean, I don't know. I do know that the data would also demonstrate that if you're more likely to take a riskier job if you're conservative, you're more likely to be a lumberjack or a cop or a military member, whatever it is. You're just more likely to take physical risks.
We're used to risk assessment. That's a normal thing for us.
In the military, yeah. but what's interesting is that this also correlates with political leanings. Mm-hmm. And so that's just
weird.
That's just
never thought of that.
It's in the data. We do assess risk differently. Our brains light up differently. There's been interesting studies on this. And it's pretty clear. The other thing too is, from a dispositional standpoint, we have very different views of what government's role is. The left is much more likely to say that the government should take all and any action to keep you perfectly safe. We, as conservatives, are much more likely to say no.
Even that, they don't. So you just said that the government has the right to take any and all actions to make sure you're safe.
Yet, now
we have defunded the police. We've castigated the president or any governor that has dispatched federal agents to try and stop these riots and everything like that. So I'm sorry, we're getting back to that point where
they contradict each other.
They say we want this, but no, they don't want that.
This is the problem.
It's circumstantial.
Well, this is the problem with a total lack of governing principles on the left. There are no governing principles on the left. They have goals, they have outcomes that they want, but there are no governing principles, which is why it's so easy to find those contradictions. Mm-hmm. So they would, because if you presented that to them, what they would say is no, the whole point of those protests is to protect people because we're keeping this community safe from police. So that's how they would say it. That's how they would rationalize it, I think. But overall, I mean, we definitely can't agree that from a dispositional standpoint, the left is more likely to say the more government control, the better for your own good, and let's
For your own
yeah. And let's assume it's super well intentioned. They're just much more comfortable with the government telling you what to do. They enjoy living as a collective that makes them feel like it's unifying. What we try to remind them of constantly is it's not unifying to tell other people what to do. Like, that's actually divisive. I know you wish you were in this environment and this reality where everybody believed the exact same thing and had the exact same preferences. This is sort of the utopia that they believe in. This is why it gets to socialism and communism, where everybody must be for the party. But this isn't a recipe for good, right? This is a recipe for disaster. It always ends in disaster every single time.
We're seeing it.
It means tyranny. It means divisiveness. It means 51% of the population beating the other 49% over the head. This is not good, right? This is why we have a republic with checks and balances and rights that can't be infringed upon. All right, that's the whole point. Yeah.
Well, as you know, we have a lot of Texas natives that watch the show and stuff like that. So what do you want to tell them about this election, about things that are coming up in their areas and things that you want?
Everything's on the line. You got to vote down ballot. We don't have straight ticket voting anymore, which is a good thing. But it doesn't mean you got to put that extra work in. Go down ballot and get your state reps, get your judges, your district attorneys.
Pay attention to the judges and the DAs.
This is so important because these are not just, hey, it's one well-qualified judge versus another well-qualified judge. That's not what's happening here. You have two different philosophies on what the judiciary is even supposed to do. You have to vote Republican because all that really means, not that they're going to advocate for Republican policies. That's not what a Republican judge does. They just follow the law, right? Just follow the law and use, interpret the law to the letter correctly. The left tends to believe that the judiciary is meant to legislate, is meant to be a super legislature. We were seeing that in the hearings this week with Amy Coney Barrett. I don't have to beat this dead horse. But you got to vote down ballot, and you've got to go out and talk to your friends. You've got to ask people and really have those debates. I mean,
leave the bubble.
Yeah,
that's what I've been doing. The last few
look at
weeks
the policy platforms and think like, what is better for your life? And you cannot believe the stuff that's coming out of the Democrat
I've
platform.
been trying. So I've been trying to leave the bubble because nothing is ever solved or there's no understanding when everyone that you surround yourself with agrees with you all the time.
Yeah.
But I haven't found any shred of good information outside that bubble. Every time I ask, I'm trying to understand what is it that you want? Like even, I have a guy that I know that's he's a blatant Antifa member. Mm-hmm. A filmmaker that I used to be friends with back in the day. And I engaged with him. And when I can get him into a conversation where I go, okay, do we agree on we don't want to pay more when it comes to being taxed? Here's our current taxes. Do we both agree on this? Well, yes. Okay, do we agree that we want security and safety? Do we agree we want people to be able to practice whatever faith they believe in? Like, it's yes all down the board. I'm like, but do you see where some of these are falling in line where you're backing up? They aren't okay with this. So it's like when I can get somebody to start lining out what they're everybody generally falls into the same docket. They all don't want to give up more of their money. They don't want to give up more of their freedom. They don't want to be told how much gas they can buy every month and things like that. But it's like, they're not thinking about this.
It's very confusing. I think they have built this sort of villain-esque caricature of conservatives. So the left tends to assign intentions to us in a very erratic way. They are the kings of building straw man arguments about what conservatives actually believe.
Propaganda.
Yeah, and it's very strange. And do we do it to them sometimes? I mean, probably, but I think through it pretty closely. And I'm always waiting to be surprised as you're describing. You have those conversations. I'm always waiting to be surprised by what they might say. Like, okay, maybe you're just going to give me an insight and a way of thinking about this that I just haven't seen before. And then they don't, and I would do this at Harvard all the time, right? So I was at a policy master's program. So, and I'm like one of the only Republicans there. So I'm constantly being fed the Democrat side, and I'm just waiting to be surprised. I'm waiting to hear that insight that I just didn't
I kind of agree with that.
Yeah, okay, so that's how you think about this. But then there's nothing. or at least there's nothing that I haven't heard before. And so, this is again, I think there's a healthy balance between the left and the right. The left points out problems that the right might be inclined to ignore. Okay, because the right is just more likely to have an appreciation for tradition and structures and institutions that have worked for a very long time, and we're reluctant to just radically change those. It does imply that we might have blind spots to problems or injustices, and so having a more liberal sentiment in society is a healthy balance. But the problem is that liberal sentiment comes with no governing principles, right? And governing principles are important when it comes to solving the problems, and that balance has to be maintained. And I think that balance is very, very out of whack on the Democrat
Well, I think
Party.
both people as a whole needs to change their way of thinking and going into some of these things, whereas like you can't come in saying you're never going to change my mind. That's just not that's not healthy. It's not you're not going to fix anything at that point, like, because I have engaging in all this all these comments and commentary and stuff in the last few weeks. I'm not in there saying I'm right. Present me a reasonable argument, but the thing is you can't keep them on track. Because they will loop around and
it's a very everybody has that
because he
experience
called me a
debating the left.
meaning, or he was mean to this person. It's like, yeah, but that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah,
we're talking about a policy.
They jump from thing to thing.
That doesn't
You're like,
matter what name he called somebody else. We're talking about this policy right here. This is what one side says. This is what the other. Which one do you align with? And then you can't even answer that
that's
question.
always how that conversation goes. It's like whack-a-mole.
Do you have any Democrat friends on the Hill at all that you go back and forth with? Or
Yeah,
I mean,
but
any that has ever presented anything that made you go, oh wow.
Well, the people, ironically, the only people that I believe you can have that like honest, like focused conversation with are two people that are leaving Congress: Joe Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard,
and these are not moderate people. Like, just to be, Tulsi's. She's got a great following on the right, and for good reason. She just kind of like takes it to Democrats. But but there's very little on a policy spectrum that we agree on. And Joe Kennedy's very liberal. But these are two people who will at least like have that without frantically moving from thing to thing. Like they're gonna confront what you said. That's really important, and that just happens so rarely. And you should catch yourself. If you find yourself, even as a conservative, arguing that way. Jump, once you don't like the direction of a conversation, jumping to well, you're also bad people. Like that's not the point, though.
No. We were right here, and now you've got us over here in left field.
It's lazy thinking, and if you just have to shrug and be like, I don't know, I got to look into this more, because that's perfectly honorable.
Well, now that you mention her, I gotta ask you this. So we're losing Tulsi, and Tulsi was one of our biggest advocates of keeping the A10. Are you going to jump on that with us now? It's close to my heart.
Yeah.
As a JTAC.
Yeah. Why not? Yeah.
We don't want to get rid of it.
Yeah. I didn't know she was involved in that.
Yes,
discussion.
she was actually one of the main people that saved the A10 for the Air Force.
I love it.
Along with a number of others. And
my main focus right now is getting Space Force to use Navy ranks.
Yes. Talk about that, please.
Confronting some opposition.
Give us the spiel on it.
So we managed to get an amendment through out of the House and the NDAA that would require Space Force to use Navy ranks for obvious reasons, right? America expects its Space Force to have a Navy-esque culture to it. Our pop culture is indicative of that. They're ships.
Space Force will have ships.
They're going to have
ships. The Air Force
ships.
doesn't have ships.
They're going to have a fleet.
A captain. There's going to be a captain of the ship.
Captain, right. And also Space Force needs some cultural independence from the Air Force, the way the Marine Corps has cultural independence from the Navy.
Yeah.
I think that's important, and it allows them to grow into their own in a way. And again, America, I think, expects it on a cultural level. So we're going to make that happen. It's still being debated in circles in the Senate.
We need to
get people you need to pressure senators who are in the Armed Services Committee in the Senate, get them to do this. Get them to support it. Tweet at him. Get on Facebook.
Navy rank for Space Force.
Navy rank.
But you said you're gonna change a few of the enlisted ranks because we don't need seamen in
You don't
Space
need seamen in
Force.
space. Yeah, so that was an oversight on our
Spacemen?
part.
Can we be spacemen?
I want to leave it up to the Air Force, frankly. To,
Give them some insight. into this.
Like I'll allow some flexibility on the enlisted ranks, but I don't think. Yeah, but I think the officer rank should.
The officer ranks are pretty good.
Be the way they are. Yeah,
I like that. This is hilarious.
Yeah,
when you told me this, I was laughing.
William Shatner got on board. He didn't even know we passed the amendment, but he just started writing about it and tweeting about it. And I was like, I got you, bro.
That is great. Well, anything else you want to add? Your book doing good?
Oh, book's doing good. Buy the book. Could do better if people would buy more of it. More of it. It's been hailed by many as the greatest book of the year.
Of the year?
Isn't that what you said?
I heard it was the greatest book of the century.
Of the century.
I go with 100s. I'm a metric system kind of guy.
Well, you're thinking big.
Yeah, I measure things in kilograms, not inches.
Big thinker.
And people can follow you on Instagram at just Dan Crenshaw.
Dan Crenshaw TX
Awesome.
on Twitter, Instagram. Just Dan Crenshaw on anything and find it.
Just Google it. Just Google it.
Just do the Google.
Well, thanks for joining us on Free Range American.
Appreciate it,
We'll have
brother.
you back again. Take care.